Welcome. This is your host, Heidi Watson, on Two Tier Canada, the podcast where we explore the ups and downs of private practice in a diverse network of health professionals. This month on Two Tier Canada, I got to interview an old preceptor of mine. It was for my very first placement, and I got to go up to Saskatoon and work with David at Theraplay. So David has been an occupational therapist since 2000, and he's been self-employed since 2001. In 2004, he officially started Theraplay after many requests from the community for more pediatric work and support. This is where he and other occupational therapists dedicate themselves to enabling occupational performance in children, adolescents, and adults with developmental needs. David has been married for 18 years and has 2 children, and I am very excited to welcome him to the podcast this month. So let's see if we can get him on the line.
Good morning, it's David.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. How are you?
Good. Long time no chat.
It has been a while, Heidi.
I can't believe it's almost, I was thinking about it this morning. I think it's almost been like 6 years.
It seems at the same time so long ago and also just like yesterday, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, since we're talking about placements, do you still do that for the university?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have 2 U of M students right now.
Really?
Yeah.
What placement?
It's their second to last placement. I'm not sure. I guess an intermediate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to do half of my very first ever placement with you, so that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it worked out great, didn't it?
Yeah. Do you still work with Ryan?
Absolutely. Although we stopped sharing students, I think you were one of the last ones to do that.
Oh.
Ryan's, I think, become aware that he can keep a student occupied and engaged for the entirety of a placement.
Right.
I know that back in his days back when you shared with us, he was a little bit concerned that he just didn't have enough going on that the student could participate in.
Right. And then, but yeah, you guys definitely don't both have two very busy businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about you tell us a little bit about occupational therapy and why you picked occupational therapy as your profession?
Sure. Well, my OT origin story is a little bit less exciting or inspired than a lot of the folks who I meet as young therapists or as students. I'm kind of an accidental occupational therapist. So back in the middle 90s, when I decided I wanted to be some type of therapist, I really thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. And so I researched what the steps were to apply to and then be accepted by physical therapy at the University of Manitoba. And along the way, I learned that one of the things that applicants were expected to do were to attend a rehab open house that the students in the programs would host yearly. And so I did. And I had a very tenuous personal connection. One of the PT students at that time came from my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were chit-chatting a little bit, and she said, "Oh, Dave, you really need to go look at the occupational therapy stuff. Like it's really interesting." And so I did. And I thought, well, it is kind of interesting, but I didn't really change my plan. But I ended up taking her advice and applying to both programs, physio and OT.
Oh, okay.
And then when I got both letters in the mail on the same day, and one was the thick letter and one was the thin letter.
Uh-oh.
I opened the thick letter first, and it was an acceptance to the OT program. There was the thin letter, which was the opposite from the physio program. So I was, how old was I at the time? Like 19, maybe, 19 years old at the time, and then trying to decide, well, do I try again, or do I kind of go forward with what's in front of me here?
Mhm.
And I decided to go forward with what was in front of me. And so for a little while, I was bummed out. But then pretty quickly, within the first week, being with the people who ended up being my cohort, my classmates, and then I felt like it ended up being really, really the right place for me.
That's really good. Kind of like got forced into that direction.
Yeah.
So why did you end up picking pediatrics? Like, how did you fall into that groove?
Well, there's another accident. So going through school, I would never have predicted that I would have chose to work with kids, right? I was really young. I finished the program when I was 22, right? I was licensed and practicing and helping people when I was 22 years old. I didn't have any experience with kids. You know, I was the oldest in my family. I didn't have kids of my own. I didn't have cousins who were close who, you know, would bring their kids over. I had zero experience. I did have one school-based placement in Steinbach, Manitoba, and it was great, but I didn't really, again, it's a real parallel to my entry into occupational therapy. It was interesting and great, but it didn't really change my initial plan that I wanted to work with hands. I really wanted to do hand therapy.
Yep.
I had a great placement that way too, and then actually my first job was at Wascana Center, where I was able to do a little bit of that hand therapy, and I really, really liked it. But then, so I worked a year in the public system in Regina, and a classmate of mine, Ryan, who we talked about already, started an adult-based private practice in Saskatoon and invited me to join. And so I did.
Are you from Saskatoon originally?
No, I grew up in Manitoba. I grew up in small town Manitoba.
Oh, okay. And so Regina was not your home either, and so now being pulled to Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And so from the day that Ryan started, he'd been receiving infrequent but steady requests for pediatric service, and he always declined. He kind of was saying, "That's not what I do. I'm not really good at it." And sorry, right?
Yeah.
But we had, I guess, that information coming in, right, where there was a steady set of requests, and we also knew that around Saskatchewan, or say around Saskatoon, there was no one providing the service, right? So that we had an indication of a demand, and no one was set up to meet the demand. One of the contracts that we were working on together was to provide, I guess, just general OT to one of the northern health regions.
Okay.
And while we were there, we had to see everyone, right?
Yeah.
And so over the course of one winter, I worked with a 13 or 14-year-old boy and taught him to ride a bike. It was really satisfying. It was really, really satisfying to see this kid learn to ride a bike and be able to kind of join his peers in the community riding around town on their bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty formative experience. And then shortly after that happened, the therapist at the publicly funded children's program here began bringing in the 4 courses required for certification in the sensory integration and praxis test.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, and so
What's that
I
called
jumped
again? What's that program called?
When I did it, I think it was just called like the SIP certification courses. I don't know what it's called now. I think they've changed the name a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was, I believe, delivered jointly by the publisher of the test and the university where Gene Ayres was attached, like USC maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, anyway, so I hopped on it and started taking the courses, fueled by that experience in the north, helping this kid ride his bike.
Mm-hmm.
Following that, I had completed a few of those courses while still working primarily with adults. And then coincidentally, both the Catholic and the public school boards advertised for term OTs. And so I bid on both as a contractor.
Just a temporary position?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. The Catholic board was to cover a mat leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure what the original intent of the public board was. But I bid on both and was awarded both. I was really shocked and thrilled. So.
And so how did you do that as a private contractor? Like, how did you word it to them? Like, how did that work?
Well, I guess Heidi, I just said, I'm coming from private practice, and if you're open to it, I would like to approach this as a contractor rather than as an employee. And then
send in a resume, and that was like the cover letter.
Yeah. So the cover letter had like the usual cover letter stuff. This is me. These are my skills. This is what I'd like to do, and I would also like to approach it this way if you're open to it.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. So both boards interviewed me, and both boards ended up giving me the terms. And the Catholic system, their term was for the one school year, and that kind of ended at its appointed time.
Because of the mandate. So I'm guessing they came back.
Yeah. And I've been able to continue renewing the public schools contract continually since then. So I've provided the public schools. I say I, but I guess my business has provided the public schools with consultative OT service for, I guess, since 2004.
Nice, when you got that initial contract.
Yeah.
I just wanted to back up a little bit. Were you intimidated at all? Was there anything that was holding you back when you got that call to come up to Saskatoon and go into adult private practice? Because you would have been public for that 1 year, or did you always know that you kind of wanted to do private work?
Well, no, I did not always know I wanted to do private work. Again, here's the third time I'm saying it. When I was becoming a therapist training, I never would have guessed that I would have wanted to. To be very blunt.
So surprise to OT, surprise to pediatrics, and surprise to private.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking about it with my wife, and even though we had good things going in Regina, we had said to each other, if this is something we say no to, there'll be a lot of regret, right? Because we'll never know how it could have been.
Yeah.
Whereas if we try and it doesn't work out, we're risking very little, right? We had the furniture in our apartment, and that was really all what we had, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just the two of us, and we didn't have kids.
And where was you from originally?
Also from Manitoba.
Okay, so you're already out of your home province.
Yeah. So when we finished our program, she's a massage therapist, and I'm an OT. When we finished our programs in 2000, we had planned to move away from Manitoba for a couple of years, and then just be back, kind of go get a little bit of job experience. Neither of us had anything interesting or solid arranged in Manitoba at the time. Mm-hmm. But we thought that family would kind of draw us home.
Yeah.
And I think that if this offer to start private practice wouldn't have come, then I think we probably would have been drawn home. But this offer to, now when I say start, I don't want to make it sound like I was starting the practice. Ryan started the practice, and his offer was for me to join him in his practice. Mm-hmm. So that also mitigates the risk a little bit, if that makes any kind of sense. Maybe the decision a little bit easier, right? Regardless, if that offer to join him hadn't have come, then I could see us having returned to Manitoba.
Follow the original plan back.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't scary at all. Like, you trusted Ryan, knew him, and took the dive to come up.
There was uncertainty, and there were some lean times in initially, but the way you paraphrase it is exactly right. I trusted Ryan, and we knew that on balance, the risk was low, and our material risk, I guess, was low, and our risk for regret was pretty high.
Was much higher.
Yeah.
So when did it become Theraplay? And
Yes.
When did you
So
get
I
the
get,
building and that kind of stuff?
yeah. So it was midway through that year that I was doing the contract work with the public schools, or sorry, with both school divisions, that I started to really, really seriously think about um, leaving from Ryan's practice, and then to start a separate practice to focus on kids. Um, so we were talking about it and planning for it in that year, kind of 2003 and 4, maybe 2004 and 5. I don't exactly remember. But the Theraplay opened its first doors on January 1st, 2005. And at the time, it was just me, no receptionist, no admin support, just me.
And is it the same building you're at now?
No, I've moved 3 times. I've moved twice. I've been in 3 buildings.
Because like the one you have now has quite a bit of space. Like it's quite large.
Yeah, well, the one I'm at now, I've been in for I guess it'll be 6 years. Yeah, it'll be 6 years or 5 years. Sorry, I'm losing track of the years. 5 or 6 years here in the middle of March.
Okay.
Before that, I was on 8th Street, which is where I think I was when we did our placement together.
Across from Starbucks? That's all I remember.
Yeah, that's right, across from Starbucks. Yeah, and so my place now is of a similar size, but it's laid out differently. It's a freestanding building, and it's a converted house, so it works.
Oh.
It works really well for what we're trying to do here.
Right. So it is different than I remember then.
Yeah. And the first place was small, it was less than 1,000 square feet, and it was in a almost like an office park, but in like the low rent part of town, right, where lots of businesses just kind of start, right? It was great though. It was exactly what we needed. It was the risk was low because the rent was affordable, and I knew for a fact, or part of my calculation was that if it doesn't work and I'm stuck in this 2-year lease, which is a really short lease, I know that I can pay the rent and still pay my mortgage and everything, right?
Even
So
if for some crazy reason you had 0 clients, like there's no.
Yeah. So anyway, that January 2005 was when we first opened, and we've been in our current location. I guess it's coming up on 5 years now, and I think a little bit more clearly since March 2013.
Because for those that don't know, the sensory work that you do, it does require like open physical space for the kids to move around in, right? It's kind of like a gym, or how would you describe it to someone who's never seen like a sensory integration clinic?
Well, I call it a gym, but it's a bit of a misnomer if the word gym makes you think of like a basketball court with a bunch of lines painted on the ground. It's kind of a mix of maybe a very, very small gymnastics space combined with what's the name of that like exercise trend where they have suspended like ribbons from the ceiling?
Yeah, like the acrobatic yoga.
Yeah, is that what they call it?
I can't. It's got a different name. Like it was like nice silky bouncy hammocks.
Yeah. but comparing it to other things is a poor way to describe it. I would say it's a big open space with mats on the floor, pillows and balls and swings, and we use the opportunities the equipment and the space provide to create experiences that kids need or want to help them first become self-regulated or behaviorally organized, and then be able to use that regulated state to push forward and continue developing whatever skills are important for them to develop.
And then did you, like that's a very specialized part of OT, and like you had talked about getting that extra training. that SIP training. Have you gotten more training in that direction, or is there other certifications that you've collected for that kind of practice? Or
Um, I disagree a little bit about that, thinking that sensory is a very specialized or very kind of secretive or esoteric part of occupational therapy. It's not secret knowledge. It's published in our journals. It's published in our textbooks. People can read it and do it, right?
And they do classes on it in school.
And we learn about it in school, exactly so. And so I like to push back against that when I hear that a little bit. It's not secret, and it's not anything other than one way of thinking about and working with kids. A way it happens to have been developed by an OT, and a way that OTs claim as their own. But it's in my mind, it's no different than choosing to practice. I don't know, in a inpatient mental health facility, right? There's specialized content that everyone needs to learn, but then you applying the OT process or taking the OT lens to that content and working with the people remains universal.
Right.
Just a quick interruption here. Two-Tier Canada has been brought to you by the Electronic Health Information System, an electronic health record made specifically for private practitioners. Check out our demo at e-his.ca. Now, let's get back to this month's interview.
And so you feel more like you know more that sensory approach to pediatrics is just an essential to working in pediatrics at all.
It's essential to the way that I want to practice, right? But if another OT were to say, I'm not interested in sensory, I'm more interested in thinking about working with kids this way, and if that way had a little bit of research support, then I couldn't argue with it, right?
And so it's almost like this is your theoretical model of approach.
Yeah,
Am
exactly.
I getting it right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But to kind of go back and answer the other question, another thing that's really informed my practice is the training I did in the relationship development intervention. I've let that certification lapse, but I use what I've learned with every person that walks through the door. And if anyone is thinking about learning more about it, RDI is a great program. But since I've undergone the training, I would say you could learn very, very similar things through looking at the research on responsive interaction interventions.
Okay.
There are a number of, I guess, they're independently developed programs, both kind of for general clinical use, and others like RDI or Floor Time, or there's one called the Play Project. There's another one that I can't remember the name of. There's a number of independently developed intervention programs that have at their heart of them the adult needs to modify their communication style in order to create opportunities for development for the child, and modify it in a way that's consistent with something called responsive intervention. Sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rambling on here.
No.
That's exactly my experience with RDI really influenced my practice. Since I've done it, I've learned about this kind of broader category of interventions that I call responsive interaction interventions, and there are a number of different interventions, kind of all influenced by the same idea of modifying your interaction in a really responsive way.
Yeah, and
can help produce and connect. Can help produce the kind of skill growth that we want to see with our kids.
How much of your practice is working with autism?
It remains the largest single diagnostic category in our practice. And my guess would be between 40 and 60%, but I don't have that, firmly in mind or firmly in front of me. Yeah.
And so do you find that these different interventions in pediatrics are still really useful for children who don't have autism, that have other diagnoses as well?
Absolutely. We have had a lot of growth in children who have experienced complex trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because the methods that we were using to help people with autism are really compatible with best practice for kids who have experienced complex trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some slight differences, and because of course there are, but when social workers or psychiatrists or psychologists saw our work, they recognized how it remained, how it was compatible with what we want to do for kids or with kids with trauma. Yeah.
So where you mentioned social workers and psychologists, where do you get a lot of your clients from, especially at the beginning when you didn't have as
Mm-hmm.
much of it as a business presence?
Mm-hmm. At the very beginning, people found me. People had been waiting for an opportunity to bring their kids somewhere in Saskatoon, mm-hmm. and primarily the autism community. Parents of kids with autism, by my observation, are really, really highly networked.
Right. So
right?
One of them just had to find you, and then boom.
Yeah. And as we did good work, people were more willing to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. If I had started and done awful work, I expect the outcome would have been very different,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But thankfully, I got a few things right early on. But that's word of mouth through like I guess support group or family or personal networks remains the single largest source of referrals for us. There are a few teachers who talk about who are exposed to what we do through our work in the school, mm-hmm. and then who talk about additional work who might be helpful for their families. Mm-hmm. More and more social workers have slowly learned about what we do, and social workers specifically with the Ministry of Social Services, right? So responsible for kids who are in the care of the province.
Right. And so that's where the new group of children with complex trauma is coming from?
Primarily,
Child
that's right.
and family services kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly so. A few other professionals. One time in, 2008 or 2009, like a relatively long time ago, I had ordered a bunch of prescription pads, Theraplay prescription pads, and just mailed them to all the doctor's offices around town.
As like a referral form?
Yeah. Completely on a whim, why not, right? I think maybe one of my physiotherapy friends said they did that for their practice. Like, why not? It was an affordable thing, and they were hard to mail. We tried to do it as inexpensively as we could. So we just kind of stuffed them in envelopes and mailed them around, and a bunch of them came back. Anyway, they eventually kind of got out to everyone, and stunningly, a few of those prescription notes still come back to us.
Really?
It's
and how
stunning.
long has it been?
Somewhere between 8 and 10 years. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, the best referral source that we've had is word of mouth. Is kind of clients networking with each other. And that comes from doing good work,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And then people will talk
Yeah.
because they want to
Well,
help their friends and their colleagues and things like that. So.
yeah, exactly so. I've learned that in the context of private practice, doing good work looks a little bit different than it might in the context of a public practice, right?
What do you mean?
Well, obviously, we need to be clinically sound. We need to help kids achieve the goals that parents set for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that they, when they're able to, that they themselves set, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to, parents need to see why they keep coming, right?
Yeah.
Parents won't keep coming if they're not perceiving the value. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the flip side is, so that's universal, right? Like that's every therapist everywhere, right? But the part that I feel is a little bit different in the public side of service delivery, in the private side of service delivery, is that we also need to be efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to deliver these results, and I can't take all day doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I need to bill somebody for my time, right? So if I spend 6 hours, I don't know, like researching the best pair of scissors for this guy, then like I can't bill that 6 hours.
No.
And it's excellent clinical service, but it's 6 hours that
It's just gone.
It's just gone. Exactly so. So it needs to be both, right? In private practice, it needs to be excellent clinical care,
Wow.
delivered
Super.
well efficient. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel trapped by your business or swamped? Like, you do practice with employees now. Was that a way to compensate for being swamped, or how did that all come together?
Yes, absolutely. The growth that we had is pretty organic. It's a big commitment to hire someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really responsible for making sure that I can provide a workplace that people want to work at, and clinical work that's fun and interesting and challenging, and like
it's their livelihood.
And it's their livelihood. Exactly so. So I feel really responsible for all of that. And so when it's time to hire somebody, it's not a decision I make lightly, right? So in that way, growth has been slow but steady, in response to this, knock on wood, continual increasing in demand.
Right.
Did I ever feel trapped? Absolutely. There were times early on when I couldn't take a day off, because if I took that day off, then that's however much I wasn't able to bill, and that like might have challenged my ability to pay the lease at the end of the month, right?
Right. Like when you got when you expanded to the larger places and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, thankfully those days haven't been around for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
But early on, when the demand was met by just me, or me like plus one therapist, or me plus one and a half therapists, that kind of it made the physical space, it really stretched the affordability of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then as demand increased, and we kind of used that space to a more full, or to a fuller capacity, then that alleviated
that pressure.
Yeah.
So are you able, what other strategies did you use to kind of get out of that being trapped? Was there any other than hiring employees and finding more affordable strategies?
Well, for me, that was kind of it, Heidi. Like, I knew when my lease was up, and I remember coming coming to the realization myself, and then kind of asking my wife's opinion on it. And I thought to myself, we decided that if I was just working to create my job and pay this rent, then it wasn't worth it, right? Like the freedoms that being self-employed create weren't being realized because I was beholden to to the responsibilities and commitments that weren't necessarily clinical, right?
Right.
And but yes, so my how I alleviated that was to say, if things don't change, if things remain as they are when it's time to renew this lease, if I'm just working to pay myself and pay the receptionist and pay the rent, and then we're like, there's
running in a circle kind of thing.
Right. If I'm just running in a circle, then it'll be time to pull the plug.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought beyond what that would mean, like where I would go, what I would do, because shortly after I had that realization, we kind of took the next step. Right, we got to the point where we required another therapist, and then that kind of broke the cycle.
Right. And yeah, sometimes it's like that pressure is needed to kind of push that next piece forward and to see that it's time.
Yeah. Well, but I couldn't have hired another therapist 6 months prior, right?
Oh,
because the demand wasn't there, right? And it needs to, the way that I prefer to run my business, the demand needs to be there.
Yes, and proven.
To bring somebody on.
Makes sense. How else has your business impacted your family, the good and the bad?
In a lot of ways, it's impacted my wife a lot because after we started this business, a lot of decisions that we would have made just kind of between ourselves have this third factor to consider, right?
Right.
When are we going to go on a holiday? Are we going to go on a holiday? Stuff like that. I'm always on.
Handle it? Can the other employees handle it? Those kind of pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, so you said you were always on?
I'm always on, right? So if the alarm at the building goes off, I need to come, right? If the toilet backs up, I need to fix it, right? It's always
on.
Yeah, and that's part of it, though, right? It's not a complaint, but it's a reality. It answers the question to how does it impact my family. It impacts my family because I'm, knock on wood, increasingly less so, but I'm always responding to things that I didn't plan for, right?
Right. Kind of happen.
Yeah, precisely so. But in a positive way, now that we've kind of gotten to where we've gotten to, and I have a little bit of flexibility in my schedule and in my both my day-to-day schedule and my month-to-month schedule, I can always be at my kids' activities. It's never a hassle for pick up and drop off.
Because it's your hours all the time.
It's precisely so. I a bit more abstractly, when I contrast what my wife and I are doing and what we're showing our kids to the way that we were both brought up, I like that I'm modeling and demonstrating this kind of initiative, this kind of self-starting initiative for my kids.
Like if this is a reality that you want, this is how you go forward and make that real.
That's exactly so. Yeah.
You have more bookings, right? This was kind of near the end of our time. Was at 9:30. Half an hour goes way too quick. What would be? I'm not sure what to ask. I wanted to know what your future plan for your business would be, but I kind of want to know what you would have told yourself at the beginning there, like when you decided to come up to Saskatoon?
Mm.
I'm curious about both, so you can kind of pick your favorite.
Sure. Well, I'll try and answer both quickly. I don't know what advice I would have given myself when I started, other than to say, like, work well and work hard and it'll be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a cliche, but it's true, right? And future plans, I hope more of the same. You know, I hope that our reputation remains positive. I hope that more and more families and other referral sources continue to see value in bringing their kids to see us and work with us.
Mm-hmm.
I have a kind of a vague notion of becoming more actively involved in research.
Oh.
I would like very much to be able to contribute to the body of research knowledge documenting the impact of the type of work that we do.
Right. And start getting like actual, I can't even ever say that word, statistically significant, like sort of results. And it's really nice because you're actually really close to the University of Saskatchewan too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But yeah, yes, I don't have anything like firm established or even when that might start, but it's increasingly on my mind. It's increasingly something that I'm feeling compelled to contribute to.
Mm-hmm. Another way to give back to the community.
Yeah.
Already on top of the amazing work that you do.
Well, thank you for saying so. I'm not so sure.
No, I've been there. I saw it. I got to do that placement.
Yeah, thank you for saying so.
Is there any other final thoughts that you wanted to give the listeners, or?
No, not at all. I'll be very curious to learn who would find this interesting.
Yeah, all of our eager for private practice kind of people across Canada who we're trying to draw attention to. So if that's who's listening, or if that's not who's listening, somebody should tell me who you are so I can tailor it better. And can I put all your business contact information down in like the show notes?
That'd be lovely.
If they can contact you if they have questions.
That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for chatting with me today. I hope you have fun with the rest of your kiddos.
Well, thanks, and good luck to you on this podcast. I've been thinking that there's a lot of room in the space for a kind of a therapy-oriented podcast. So that's awesome.
Okay. Well, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
So big thank you to David for being on the show today. It's so valuable to hear about the experience of a clinician who is running a clinic and has employees and a building and what it's like to manage that and how it impacts your life. If you liked today's show, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on whatever you're listening on, and you can check below in the show notes for details on how to get a hold of David if you have any questions, or if you're looking for mentorship and placement. I think they still work closely with the universities. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe, and we hope to have you listening next month when we interview our next clinician to show you the diversity in private practice in Canada. Thanks again.